Have you ever noticed this? It's a weird thing that happens. Someone fights their way out of a really tough situation. They move, they find success, and then, instead of turning back to help the people they came from, they start to look down on them. It's a real puzzle, right? So let's get into it. I mean, this is the big question we're tackling today. It just doesn't seem to add up. You would expect empathy. You'd think they'd want to lift everyone else up. But instead, what we see is judgment, this feeling of superiority. And look, this isn't just about someone having a bad personality. It's actually a systemic breakdown in our thinking, and we're going to diagnose exactly how it happens. So here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we're giving this phenomenon a name, the Firaun Paradox. Then we'll introduce this really powerful tool for understanding it, kind of like an operating system for reality. After that, we'll dissect what makes up the superiority complex, look at the cognitive biases that are actually fueling it, and finally, talk about the antidote. Okay, section 1. Let's start by giving this thing a proper name. We're calling it the Firaun Paradox because it really charts this bizarre journey from being part of a community that's struggling to becoming someone who, in a way, oppresses it. So what is it exactly? It's what happens when someone gets just a taste of privilege and then develops this Pharaoh-like complex. And again, this isn't just about a few bad apples. It turns out this is a predictable pattern, a kind of glitch in our cognitive and moral wiring that we can actually map out and understand. Now, to diagnose a problem that runs this deep, you can't just use the old tools. You need a completely new lens to see reality. And that's what we've got. A powerful analytical framework that's built for exactly this kind of issue. It's called the Quantum Governance Cognitive Operating System, or, QG-COS for short. The best way to think about it is like an operating system, but for reality itself. Its whole purpose is to find the bugs, the glitches in our mental code that lead to these destructive behaviors, like the Firaun Paradox. And this comparison just makes it so clear. A computer's OS, like Windows, is all about managing physical stuff, RAM, CPU, to make things fast and efficient. Well, QG-COS does the same thing, but for our minds. It manages our cognitive resources, like our attention and our moral compass. And its goal isn't just speed. It's optimizing for stewardship, for real human development. All right, so we've got our tool. Let's get to the diagnosis. We're going to break down this Firaun paradox into 3 key components, 3 core cognitive failures. So the first piece of the puzzle is this internal mindset. The framework calls it the Firaun, or Pharaoh, archetype. And this isn't about the historical guy in Egypt. It's a pattern of behavior. The person starts to completely buy into the whole self-made myth. They begin to hoard agency, the ability to make things happen, and they become convinced that their success is 100% their own doing. And this is where the trap snaps shut. Their whole identity becomes incredibly fragile. Their self-worth isn't coming from inside anymore. It's totally dependent on being part of this new successful in-group. So to protect that new status, they have to push their past away. And that almost always means looking down on it. It's a defense mechanism, really. The second component is the tool they use to enforce all this. And that tool is language. The framework calls this linguistic shirk. It's basically when you take a universal idea and weaponize labels to make it exclusive. Think about phrases like, immigration without assimilation is invasion. It takes a normal human process and twists it into a threat, all to protect the in-group. The source material offers this incredibly sharp critique on this exact point. It says that these divisive labels, they're just man-made. They're not some fundamental truth. They're just names that people made up to create these artificial divisions, and there's no real authority behind them at all. And make no mistake, this stuff isn't harmless. Weaponizing labels causes what the framework calls facade. It's a kind of cognitive corruption. It literally rots our ability to see things clearly. It's used to justify unfair social divisions, and maybe worst of all, it makes us forget a really simple truth. Where you're born is just pure chance. We're all part of the same human family. So we have the internal mindset, right? And we have the external tool, the language. But what's the engine that powers this whole thing? Well, that brings us to our third piece, the cognitive biases that drive this entire transformation. Now, according to this framework, this isn't really a conscious choice someone makes. It's fueled by these deep-seated biases that are firing off before we even start to think rationally. You can think of them like glitches in our mental software that mess with our nuffs, our true self. And this table just lays it out so clearly. First, you get in-group bias. You start to identify so strongly with your new group that your empathy for your old one just plummets. Then self-serving bias kicks in. Suddenly, my success is because I'm brilliant, but their failure? Oh, that's their fault. And finally, temporal bias locks it all in, making you chase the short-term hit of status over the long-term value of actual human connection. And here's the kicker. These biases don't just happen in a vacuum. It's a cascade, a chain reaction. First, you identify, then you justify, then you prioritize. And boom, you've got this powerful feedback loop that locks you into this new, superior identity, and it becomes incredibly hard to see a way out. Okay, we have thoroughly taken the problem apart. Now for the most important part. What do we do about it? Let's talk about the solution. The QGCOS framework proposes a really powerful antidote. It calls cognitive withholding. The framework uses the word sabr, but it defines it in this really specific, active way. This is not about passive patience. It's an active mental discipline. It's about learning to catch your own ego before it jumps to a supremacist conclusion. It's about actively stopping yourself from swallowing that us versus them narrative that's so easy to believe. It's all about self-control. And this requires a total rewiring of what success even means. In this model, privilege is no longer a status symbol that you hoard for yourself. It's seen as zakat, a responsibility. Your success, your knowledge, your resources, they aren't just for you. They were given to you so you could share them, so you could redistribute them to the whole network. And this all leads to the framework's core definition of Islam, and it's not a label, it's a state of being. It's the state of ceding, of giving up this illusion that you own your success, and instead embracing the role of a steward. It is the ultimate counter-program to that hoarding instinct of the Firaun archetype. And that really brings us to the final critical question that this whole analysis points to. And it's a question for anyone who's found any bit of success in life. Do you see that privilege as a wall to keep other people out, or do you see it as a table to invite more people to sit at? Is it a status to be hoarded, or is it a resource to be shared?